And I've said no several times to people. You have to be willing to say no sometimes. Solidarity, getting back to the WGA and the strike, the solidarity I see is great. But my point is we need that solidarity in the rooms and with each other in the rooms. We need to be sticking up for ourselves, and we also need to be sticking up for the guys sitting next to us, and we need to back each other's play when it matters most. And that is when in the moment someone is trying to take advantage and you say no, and the guy next to you says, yeah, I'm not either.
Let me hit this, Cameron. So the expose on Selena, right? The writers that came out and spoke a bit against how they were paid dirt and this and that, but it came out after the fact. That would have been a perfect time for them just to take a stand. When they were in that whatever that writer's room was, or wherever that, before they wrote down one word, because they said they ended up doing it for Selena, meaning like for her legacy.
Yeah, and here's the thing: the power of saying I have several opinions on that, and I remember that article, and I remember being upset by it because I'm like, saying this after the fact doesn't help. And so I had a conversation with a friend of mine. He's like, well, Ken, what would you have done? I go, well, there's three things here. There's a few things. Number one is, the first thing I would have said, if they came to me with a budget that was not worthy of the Selena legacy, I would have said, you guys spent this much money on the Queen's Gambit costume wardrobe, and Anna Taylor-Joy was not a known name at that time. Why do they get all this money, production value, costume, A-list talent that's in wherever they filmed, right? She's the star, and over a chess. We're talking about chess. No one knew that was going to be a hit. That doesn't say hit right off the bat, but that's what they chose to go with, right? So that's what I would have said. I would have said, look, that's number one. Number two, this is what I look at when I see a show that is underfunded, okay? And Selena was underfunded. Hentified was underfunded. And Cameron is probably going to understand this more. You know what I look at? The next thing I look at when I see something's underfunded, Paulie? How many executive producers are attached to this?
Yeah.
Because they're all getting paid. And you know how many each of them had? 13. You know how many that were on Queen's Gambit? 5.
Wow. Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, it's money laundering. Let's just be honest. It's money laundering to your buddies.
Okay, all right.
Go
ahead.
Pause for a second. Pause for a second, because someone listening, watching this, like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
So what? This property. I know. Anybody who touched that property is getting paid.
I know, but explain the equation to a layman.
I'll give you an example.
Sorry.
Thanks, Ken. Somebody comes to me, saying, I've got this, idea for this, woman of chess in the 1950s or whatever. It was like, I was like, well, they have no connections, right? But I'm like, you know what? I could hook you up with my agent because I think you got a pretty good idea, right? And that's all I did. All I did was hook them up with my agent. My agent ends up representing the project, right? It gets sold. Now they're like, what do you want? Because we don't want you suing us. You somehow set this up or part of it, right? What do you want? I'm like, okay, I want an executive producer credit, and I want you to give me $500,000 out of the budget, just because this project wouldn't exist if I hadn't put these two people together. And there's an argument for that. The argument is how much you pay that person to make them go away. But often the executive producer list of things on projects is a lot of people that are what we call non-writing producers, who have a variety of inputs that they put into it. Some of it very valuable, some of it not so valuable. And yet a substantial portion of the budget is set aside to these people who are not often in any way involved beyond a very minimal input, right? And that takes away budget from the practical things Kenneth is talking about. I'll hand it back to you, Kenneth. That's, I think, the background.
Fantastic. No, I mean, that's a great thing. Thanks, and so the longer it takes for a project, like in terms of Hentified, I mean, it was a YouTube channel first. And I think it came out of, that particular creator came out of a lot of diversity programs, Macro, Project Involve, and they all mean well. But you bet your ass that whoever touched it at Macro, they're on there as an executive producer. But I'm saying I would have handled things differently as a producer. I'm always, as a writer director, I'm always fighting with producers in terms of what's important to me. And you have to be willing to draw you have to what Ava DuVernay says, you have to follow the white guys. What would they do? You know, and
you have to know which battles to fight. You know, on a project like Selena, which has a limited budget, right? You know, you have to decide, what am I actually going to ask for this if I help set this up? Like I talk about, I knew on this indie film project, it was going to be $1.5 million budget, right? I didn't want to take anything out of that, right? If I helped set up a Star Wars project, you better believe I'm getting $2 million executive producer right out of that. Yeah. You better believe that, because that's the proper context for that. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a context for what but there's people that take advantage, especially of projects with minorities, projects that, you know, that have been developed independently. There are people that just come in saying, I want mine, right?
And they do it because they know you won't say, they know you won't say no, because they're going to be like, you should just be grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, and so and you know, that's, again, we can only change our own moral character. I mean, what can we do? All we can do is try to inspire others, and part of that is always talking from a place of integrity. That's why I'm willing to be critical of my guild and its leadership, and as well as to support it, because I want to at least have the reputation of being a person of integrity, even if people don't agree with everything I say. It's always coming from a place that's not, how am I going to get this from my angle, right?
Right.
Because